Hello and welcome to the 5th episode of Payara Podcast. My name is Dominika Tosasz-Sochacka and I will be your host for this episode. Today I would like to invite you to listen to the conversation I had with David Heffelfinger. David is the CTO of Ensode Technology, a software consulting company based in Washington, D.C. He has been architecting, designing and developing software professionally for nearly 30 years and has been using Java as his primary programming language since 1996. David is a Java champion and the author of many books about Java, Java EE, Jakarta EE, GlassFish, NetBeans, and other topics of interest for Java developers. I've had a pleasure to work with David over the last years on various projects involving Payara Server and Payara Micro. He wrote one of Payara's most popular educational ebooks, Demystifying Microservices for Jakarta EE and Java EE developers. And now that his latest book, Jakarta EE Application Development, came out only a few weeks ago in February 2024, I thought it's a great opportunity to invite him for a chat. We talked about where the idea for the book came from, who the book is aimed at, how it relates to the previous similar publications from David, as you will find out that he wrote quite a few of those over the years. Before we begin, for those of you who haven't tried Payara platform yet, we have free trials available for all of our runtimes on our website payara.fish, including simplified free trial for Payara Cloud, which is now super easy to access with no payment info required, just a simple sign up which gives you 15 days to play around with Payara Cloud. So make sure you give it a go if you haven't already. Okay, so I hope you will enjoy listening to this conversation, Jakarta EE Application Development with David Heffelfinger. All right. Hi, David. Thanks for joining the Payara podcast. It's great to have you here.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Great. So today I wanted us to talk a bit more about your latest book, Jakarta EE Applications Development, as it is exactly the type of the book that most of our listeners, Payara platform users would likely pick up and find useful. So I guess first off, congratulations for publishing the book.
Thank you.
How long has it been now since the book came out?
It's been exactly 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
All right, just to the day.
Yeah, to the day, exactly. Yeah, it was published on February 29th. So.
Okay, so still very, very fresh. So how many books have you published altogether, including this one?
Well, hard to believe even for me, but I've written 11 books.
Really? I didn't. I thought it was less than 10. I knew it was quite a few, but wow. Okay, well, 11. So it's wow. Yeah, I'm surprised. But so how long? Do you remember when was your first book published? How long have you been writing for then?
Yeah, the first one was published, I think, in 2007, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so it's been a while. It's been a few years.
Yeah, amazing. So it's just like a machine. Yeah. But that's great because I've seen many titles from you. I've never counted them, so I actually wanted to have a surprise when you answer, but I had no idea it's 11. So amazing. So your previous book was on a similar subject, but was specifically about Jakarta EE 8. What is the difference between this edition and the previous one, especially for those who might have already read the Jakarta EE 8?
Sure. So the previous book was on Java EE8, right? There was no Jakarta EE at the time. Starting with the basics, right? All the packages changed when we moved from Java EE to Jakarta EE. So I had to change all the imports, all the XML namespaces had to change. So I had to do all that. A lot of the examples are similar. They're just using updated APIs. The new book also has material and new features on Jakarta EE that didn't exist back in the Java EE days. And another thing that I did was we reordered the chapters so that how there's profiles for Jakarta EE. So the first few chapters are included in the core profile. The next few are web profiles, and the last few are the whole full platform. So that way, if you're dealing with an implementation, a Jakarta EE implementation that only implements the web profile, then you don't have to read all the way. You only read up to a certain point.
Yeah, makes sense.
Oh, and we also added a new chapter, something that I just remembered, that shows how to integrate a lot of the different APIs and specs. That wasn't there before, so it's a brand new chapter.
Yeah. Okay, now that makes sense. And exactly. And you would there would be some differences by now between Jakarta EE and Java EE, but hopefully it is the same audience that is moving from Java EE to Jakarta EE that will sort of smoothly transition from one to the next.
Correct.
So who is your book aimed at? From what I understand, this Java EE version of the book, the previous edition, was aimed at more experienced users, Jakarta EE now and Java EE users then as well. Is this the case with this one too?
Well, both the previous edition and this one assume Java knowledge, but no Java EE or Jakarta EE knowledge. If you don't know Java, then you have to go learn Java first, use another book or take a course or whatever, and then you'll be able to follow. It also assumes experience with Maven. You don't need to know how to write POM files. You just need to know how to build. The POM files are there in the examples, right? So if you know how to do an npm clean install, you pretty much know, you pretty much know enough Maven to build the examples.
Okay. So in that case, pretty much anyone who is new to Jakarta EE or Java EE can just start with your book without any previous preparation.
Correct. I mean, as long as you know Java and have some familiarity with Maven, you should be fine.
Okay, great. So yeah, that hopefully, yeah, that would be most of the Java users would be the audience then. That's
Correct.
great.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, and I think it's really good that we get more and more of those resources that are, especially the independently written resources about Jakarta EE, because obviously Eclipse Foundation are doing a lot of work, and the members of the Eclipse Foundation are getting a lot of resources out there, including Payara, but actually having independent experts like yourself, actually, creating those educational resources that can be picked up and help to adopt Jakarta EE. It's crucial because there's still a lot of work to do for Jakarta EE, I believe.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I'm personally interested in books writing process, because I find it quite fascinating how different authors approach, this huge and very time-consuming task, how differently every author approaches it. And it depends on, personal writing style, amount of time you have to dedicate the project, deadline as well, and of course the book topic itself. So what was your approach? What was your research process for gathering the content for the book? Did you draw from your personal experience with working with Jakarta, with Java EE, official documentation, combination of sources? So what was the process like for you?
That is exactly it. In addition to writing books, every now and then I teach classes on Jakarta EE and microprofile and what have you, right? So, I have some experience, excuse me, dealing with, individuals that might not be as familiar with the topic, right? So I drew from that. And I also read the specs and official documentation that is not always the most readable, right? So I tried to take all that dry, text and make it more, understandable, have people be able to follow the material better. So.
Yeah, that's it. Documentation is often very dry. It's very factual, and I think it's about the application of examples into real life scenarios. Is that something that your book is doing as well?
Well, I do have a chapter that is like that. I do like in my books to keep the examples simple and to the point. Because a lot of people say, oh, I want real life examples. Real life code is very complicated, very hard to read, right? So that's not what I want. I want something that focuses on the material that we're covering, right? And with as little as possible that is irrelevant, right? So my examples tend to be like short and to the point. I do have one chapter where we integrate different APIs, right? That is more real world, but I just don't want to distract from the topic at hand.
So yeah, so simplicity and just being very, very specific to the point. And yeah, and that makes it more open and more generic in a very positive way. So people, that there's more options to apply it into those real life scenarios, because you will get different people with different projects reading and using that material. Yeah. Do you usually get people, because obviously you are out there, you are on social media, around LinkedIn, and I know you attend some events here and there. You write different pieces of content here and there about Java, about Jakarta EE, Java EE. Do you get people asking you questions about what you've just, for example, the content of your book? Do you get people asking you, can you explain a bit more about this, or maybe getting feedback, maybe in the next book, or if you publish the next edition, can you expand on this, on that, or that? Do you get conversations like that from people at all?
It doesn't happen often, but it has happened. Sometimes I have people reach out on LinkedIn that they've read my book or whatever, and through my publisher, sometimes, people have questions, and they forward the email to me and what have you. So it does happen every now and then. And it's good to get that feedback, right? Because if there's something that, I might learn may not be as understandable as I thought, then we can fix it in the next edition. So it's always good.
Exactly, because that's what I was thinking about. If the feedback, especially after writing so many books, if the feedback from the audience is there, then that can also impact and inspire you for adding an extra chapter in the next edition or something like that. So it's good if that conversation is happening, because it's quite difficult with a book as a medium. Obviously, it's supposed to be read on your own, in your own time. That's the whole point about a book. It's not a webinar where you ask questions. It's not an event where you see someone face to face. But if it drives conversation still, it's great. I think that obviously helps to for your further work to know what else to talk about, or if there's anything missing.
Some people learn better with a live class, some people learn better with a book. The nice thing about a book is that you go at your own pace, right? When you're in a class, the class may be going too fast for you, right? You might not be understanding everything, or you maybe ahead of the class and it's too slow and you're getting bored. With the book, you just go at your own pace. So the flip side of that is that you cannot ask questions like you just said. So
yeah, there's exactly pros and cons, but I think in this day and age, most authors and obviously including you are out there. People, I guess, can reach out to you if they want to. Is that something that if you're there on LinkedIn or on other social media platforms, or if you attend the event, then I guess people can ask you questions about these things, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and we also you are also involved, or have been involved in the past with doing some of the educational resources, creating some educational resources for Payara users as well. So I know we've had questions posted on our blog or on our YouTube about the content that you've created. So there's definitely a conversation going on there, which is great, because it's all about the collaboration and actually getting feedback, so we can then produce better content, produce better learning resources, and just make sure that this the Jakarta EE is spreading, and the education about it is there in life and going strong, so we can get more and more users on board, which is what we all in this industry want to achieve. So that's great. So for you as an author, what would be the ideal outcome for a developer who reads your book and they apply your guidance in practice? What would you like your readers to achieve with your book's help?
Well, hopefully by the time you're done reading the book, you'll be able to write, Jakarta EE compliant applications, deploy them to, Jakarta EE compliant runtime such as Payara or one of the others. So that's essentially it. Be able to write some code that is compliant with the spec.
Great. And how, because again, this is actually another edition of a similar book now about Jakarta EE. And this industry is going really fast, like most of the tech industries. How do you ensure that the content or the concepts that you talk about remain relevant and up to date in this rapidly evolving technology landscape?
I mean, this is actually a printed book, right? So once it's published, right? There's no changing it after the fact. But, when technology changes and what have you, there's a new version of Jakarta EE, for example. Then we work on updating the book and releasing another edition. So,
and this is, I think, exactly what happened in this case. Like you said, the previous edition was about Java EE, and then I guess you still have to wait for enough changes to happen, and maybe for people to actually be able to adapt and adopt those changes, because a lot of the times the industry and the tools, the platforms, they change quickly, but users are not necessarily as quick to adopt it as the technology is changing.
That is correct. Yeah, a lot of big companies, especially, they're very slow. They're very risk adverse, right? They don't want to, risk something breaking if you upgrade. So they tend to stay behind in previous versions of whatever technology. So that's correct.
Yeah, so quite often, yeah, it seems, well, the industry is going fast, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the users are going as fast, and which is why all of those previous books are probably still in use by some people, because there's still people on very old versions of both Java and other Java EE and other technologies as well. So so yeah, there's still room for all of those older resources as well. So how would you recommend your readers consume the book? Could it be used depending on the project? So you just pick a specific chapter and just focus on that, or does it work best if you read literally from first to the last page?
No, I actually try to avoid the book reading like a novel, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you need to learn, for example, Jakarta REST in a hurry, right? Which I can't remember what chapter it is. I think it's 3 or something. You don't have to read the first 2 chapters to understand. You can just go to whatever you need. There is one caveat though. CDI is used pretty much all over the place. It's integrated with everything. So if you don't know CDI, I would recommend you read the chapter on CDI first, which happens to be chapter 1, and then move to whatever other chapter you need to go to. So
Yeah, that makes sense, and good about the mention about the CDI. And then if it's in chapter 1, so I guess that's where most people start, even if they don't carry on reading. But yeah, that's great. And then you just go to the table of contents,
actually,
and yeah.
correction. CDI is chapter 2. The very first chapter is just an introduction to Jakarta EE in general, explaining how there's multiple implementation, this is a spec and all that stuff. So the first real chapter, though, that covers a spec is CDI, which is chapter 2. Yeah.
Yeah, and we still need the introduction to Jakarta, because
Yeah.
it's been around for a couple of years now, but still a lot of people still need to understand where it came from, why it's even there, right?
You and I are very involved in this, so we understand. But if you're just coming into this world, it might be confused. There was Java E, now there's Jakarta E. There's also Spring. What is all this? Is it all the same? Is it different? So that's what the first chapter covers, just clearing that confusion. So
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's the same thing. Like what I do pretty much at least weekly is making sure that just the message about what Jakarta EE is, what is its place in the context of Java EE. People still call Java EE J2EE, and that's been stopped so many years ago. It's just like we just said, industry is moving fast. It doesn't necessarily mean that the users are moving as fast. They pretty much always move slower. And we just have to make sure that we educate. And yeah, we're deep in it. We're sitting in this this Jakarta EE word. So for us, it's already there. It's been there for years.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have to take a step back and understand and remember how many users are out there, and probably more of them are still not familiar or not entirely familiar. So I think books like yours are exactly what we need to make sure that this transition happens a bit more smoothly, and it just gradually goes into that direction where everybody eventually adopts Jakarta EE.
Yeah, at this point, I think that the term J2E will never die, right? It's still being used, even though it's been obsolete for so many years, right? So you still see job postings asking for J2E developers, which I'm willing to bet that the actual work does not involve J2E, at least Java EE, probably Jakarta EE, so still there.
Yeah, it's I think I've started 12 or 13 years ago in this industry, and that was already obsolete, or there was already a big campaign going on at that point, and it's still there. So if that is a good example of how much work there needs to be done, and that's only the naming. With Jakarta EE, it's much bigger, so in a way it will be easier, but in other ways it will be actually more difficult. So this is all the work really that you are doing, to help with that transition, which is really important. So what final advice or insights would you offer to developers who have read your book or are reading your book? What would be the perfect next steps for them to do?
So the book it doesn't cover every single specification of Jakarta EE because, well, it would be too much, but it covers a good majority of them, the most popular ones. But, I didn't want to write a book that was like, 1,000 pages or 1,500 pages. So it pretty much covers, it gets you to mid-level on each technology, right? But if you really want to go know all the ins and outs of specific technologies, then you could go to, for example, there's books written on Jakarta phases or Jakarta persistence. So if you need to know Jakarta persistence, for example, really well, you might have to go to some additional Jakarta persistence resources, whether books or classes or what have you. But just by reading the book, you'll know, you have a good idea of a lot of the specs and how to use them together. So
yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. So what's next for you, David? Do you have any new projects, any new books in the making?
No books yet. Probably when there's I don't know, a new version of Microprofile or Jakarta EE, I might consider writing another one. For now, I'm focusing on my consulting work. So if anybody needs my services, you can find me on LinkedIn. I have a pretty unique last name, so you'll find me.
Yes, and we definitely do recommend you, David, because we've worked
All
with
right, thank you.
Plenty of times. And so so for those listeners who are interested in getting your book, Jakarta EE Applications Development, where can they find it? What's the best way to get hold of it?
All the usual places. I've seen it on Amazon, but I'm sure it's there in Barnes and Noble or whatever other bookstore you can think of.
So is it what publisher is it from?
It's Pack Publishing.
Pack Publishing, yeah, I thought so. Okay, so hopefully, yeah, people will be familiar. We will add the links to the book in the description of this podcast, so it will be easily available. And yeah, and people can find you on LinkedIn, like you said. So if anyone has any questions, then they can reach out to you. So thanks again, David, and yeah, see you next time.
All right, thank you for having me.